I'm Junko, the parent architect of BrightPath care navigation platform, and I believe there is a victory for children of autism when communities are informed and empowered. Today, we are honored to feature a special guest, Susan Day, who's here to share her BrightPath, navigating autism with Zane, who's 16 years old.
When he was born, he was like the best baby ever, and extremely just like, I had a connection with him instantly. I think when I noticed what was going on with him, he kind of became a child that I didn't recognize, and I really didn't know what was going on inside because he was not verbal at the time. He had echolalia, so he could say certain things, but he couldn't really, process. He had auditory delay, of course, and then he couldn't process what we were saying to him, and then in turn answer any questions or verbalize what his needs were, what he wanted. So by the time he got to be 2.5, it became extremely difficult. And so I kind of lost my angel baby, and then I had, this child that needed me. I didn't know how to be there for him, so I was really, really lost. What's unique about him, though, is that his resilience, because at that time we didn't know that he had epilepsy, and he was having most likely seizures during that time. We didn't have the diagnosis yet. I had tried to get a diagnosis through our early steps program through Brevard County. Unfortunately, they just diagnosed him with like behavioral issues and sensory processing disorder. I feel like that happens a lot with autism. Sensory processing disorder happens a lot for kids on the spectrum. I had been really struggling with Zane, being nonverbal. He was extremely abusive towards me and towards my second child. I was really on a mission. I was with his ABA, I was with his occupational therapy, and his pediatrician, obviously, and no one really had any answers for me. So I went to the developmental pediatrician, and she said, well, why haven't you gotten the diagnosis? He clearly has autism. And I was shocked because I was like, well, I tried. I went to the county, thinking that they would tell me or diagnose it. My pediatrician would tell me or diagnose it. Everybody, the ABA, the occupational therapist, the speech therapist, whoever would diagnose it. She said, no, only at this time, of course, this is, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. And she said, no, only a neuro psychologist can diagnose this. And it has to be an ADOS test. At the time, ADOS was the gold standard for autism spectrum disorders. And so I, unbeknownst to me, didn't know that. And then I needed a referral from our neurologist for the epilepsy to get the, neuropsychologist, which we did. And full on, at that time, the ADOS test obviously has segments, right? The 6 segments. He had filled every single segment of that test. And I was like, thank God that I'm not crazy. Thank God, we finally got, an answer. And then when we got the answer, I was able to be like, okay, let's dive deep. Let's do the deep dive. Let's get to the Scott Center. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I could at least create some sort of map, right? Some sort of progression, some kind of this is what we can do to do this, and this. And then maybe he'll get this, and this. And it kind of cycled after that. But I mean, it took me from age 2 to almost age 5, to get this diagnosis. That's a lot of time wasted. And I feel like my biggest thing to anyone out there is that your child, you just know. And whether it's, something going on with the speech or something going on with their hearing or something going on with any delay, you have every right to take that a step further and go and figure things out. Don't ever think that you're crazy or that you shouldn't do it or it's putting a bad light on your child. That's not it at all. This is not a bad light. This is not a shadow on the child. It is you going out there and giving them a way to get better at where they, to give them the help that they deserve and that they need, to give you all the tools, right? That's what we need. We're constantly looking for tools. We're looking for help, and also not being alone in this, because it is, untreaded water, right? We want all the experts that we can get, especially while they're young. You know, I mean, they're diagnosing as early as 6 months, which I think is just so brilliant that they can do that. So that was my path with the diagnosis.
I know you went through a lot, and I know I have my own, struggle too, but you sure did a lot.
Thank you.
So Susan, take me back to where you got diagnosis, or you're fighting to get a diagnosis, and what would you tell Susan back then, based on what you know now? What advice would you give her?
I think my advice to my former self would be to listen to my gut, right? To know that it is okay to challenge an expert, because when you are out there with your pediatrician or your, the school system or wherever you're going, that it's okay to say, no, I want to take a step further. How do I do that, right? So it's not that you have to disagree with them, but you can say, well, I would like to go further and dive further into it. How do I make that happen? And again, I really think that in any way, shape, or form, whether it's autism or OCD or any kind of mental disability that you feel like you need to seek out and get diagnosed, developmental pediatricians are definitely the way to go, and they are covered under insurance. So I would say that would be your first step, because then that will reassure you what to do next, who to seek out, whether it's a neuropsychologist for the diagnosis. But definitely, just because they're an expert doesn't mean that they know your child. And there's also certain laws that restrict pediatricians in the school systems from diagnosing your child. So I think with the way that the world has gone, with everybody wants to be mad at everybody and everybody wants to sue somebody for what they said or what they did, I feel like everybody now is hands off, right? Well, that doesn't work for us, because we needed them to be more involved. We need them to be involved, and we need them to be more hands-on. So I think if they're hands-off, you need to ask the questions to bring them back into your circle, bring them back into your support, and then just seek further knowledge, for sure.
So Susan, tell us how our viewers can know more, find out more about you.
Well, Fitness on Fifth, I do have a website for Fitness on Fifth Florida, and then of course I'm on social media, all social media platforms. Fitness on Fifth has an Instagram as well as Facebook. If you need to reach out to me in any way and ask any questions, I'm happy to be supportive. And if you want to come dance with me, you are welcome, because on my YouTube channel, it goes live every day. So you can always join me live if you're not local, or you can come and dance with us in person.
We invite you to subscribe and get involved. At Bright Path, we believe the future of autism care is being rewritten by the people living it every day, and we'd love for you to be part of that change.